Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Patmos, and it is May the 7th in the evening. And I'm going to do a video that I've been meaning to do for 50 years. But the problem was 50 years ago, there was no internet, there was no Substack, and you couldn't do videos like this. You needed a 8 millimeter video camera to do videos. So I just never got around to doing this video until today. And I saw a really cool article from one of the Substacks that I follow, anti-vax Substack, anti-vax Substack that I follow, that did a really nice piece on whatever happened to homeopathic hospitals. And I thought it would be a good time for me to pull out both barrels and just do away with homeopathy for you. So I stumbled. I remember when I was an undergrad in the early '70s. Um, it was hard getting into medical school. I was in that post World War II baby boom when everything there's just a wave of people all trying to get into medical school at the same time. It was very difficult. It took me several tries to get into medical school, and I was exploring all kinds of alternatives. And I read about chiropractic and I read about homeopathy because I didn't know what these things were. So I learned about homeopathy back when I was an undergrad, and it immediately struck me as nonsensical. And that's why I've been meaning to do something, write something about, to explain it to the lay people out there who, hear the term thrown around and sounds like it has some legitimacy, but don't really understand what it is. And let me tell you, the term is used very loosely. There are some remedies, like, for example, zinc, which is in cold ease, lozenges, and Zicam, is labeled homeopathic. It's really not. And I'll tell you why. But they use that term homeopathic to kind of sound natural. So, what the heck is homeopathy anyway? Well, homeopathy is a system of healthcare, a belief system that's hundreds of years old. I mean, it goes back to the 1800s. I think it was founded by Samuel Hahnemann, who actually, that name should ring a bell for you. They actually founded, I think Hahnemann Hospital was probably a homeopathic hospital in the beginning. And there were homeopathic hospitals all over the world because people actually believed this nonsense. And as scientific medicine came and evidence and proof started to emerge, it became clear that homeopathy was nonsense, and it faded away. At least homeopathic hospitals faded away. But homeopathy, along with naturopathy and chiropractic and other nonsensical healthcare practices, has made a giant return in the last 30, 40, 50 years. And now all you have to do is just listen to what Robert Kennedy says, and you realize how they have, these kinds of disciplines are almost mainstream now. But what is homeopathy? So I told you it's a healthcare belief system, but it's based upon two concepts. And to understand homeopathy, you have to understand these two concepts. The first concept is called the law of similars, or like cures like. That's the foundation upon which homeopathy is built, and it states it's that what is the law of similars. The law of similars says that any symptom or sign of a disease that you might have is cured by a substance that produces the same symptoms. Like cures like, the law of similars. So let me just explain it a little further. Let's say, for example, you have nausea and vomiting, and that's what your complaint is. Well, if you can find something in the natural world that causes nausea and vomiting, then that becomes the cure for your nausea and vomiting. So if you're puking, take something that causes puking. If you have diarrhea, take something that causes diarrhea. If you have a headache, take something that causes a headache. No matter what's wrong with you, take something that causes that sign or symptom, and that will become the cure. That is the law of similars, or like cures like. Kind of crazy, isn't it? If you're vomiting, take something that causes vomiting to cure you. Anyhow, if you think that's absurd, it gets even more absurd. Not only does like cure like, and the law of similars form the basis of homeopathy. There's another law called the law of infinitesimal doses. In other words, the less of that substance you have, the more effective it is. So, what homeopathic medicine does is it takes this herb or this substance that let's say it causes nausea, um, and you put it in, dissolve it in water. So you have some of it dissolved in water, but that's not what you take. You take one drop of that water, and then you drop that one drop into another beaker of water and shake it up. It's pretty dilute at that point, but that's not dilute enough. You take one drop of the diluted water and put that in another beaker of water and shake it up. Now you've got two dilutions, and you keep going. And there's a certain magic number of dilutions for each of these substances. And these numbers of dilutions are not one or two, they're 20 and 30 and 40. So you're diluting something over and over and over and over and over again. If you follow it mathematically, the amount of the original substance that you put in the first bottle that ends up, 20 dilutions later, it's likely that there may be one molecule in the entire beaker. And that belief, that the law of infinitesimal doses, that the more dilute the substance is, the more effective it is. So you have this absurd thing called the law of similars, that like cures like, that if you have nausea, you take something that causes nausea, and then, but in order for it to work, you have to reduce it down so there's almost nothing left of it, and you're basically drinking water. Now, people thought, well, now wait a second, how can that be? How can it be that one molecule of something in a beaker of water is a therapy? And the homeopaths come back with this idea. It's molecular memory. The water molecules remember the stuff that was in it before you diluted it. How do you like that? So water has a memory. The molecules have been changed, and therefore, um, that's how it works. So that is the essence of homeopathy right there. No wonder homeopathic hospitals all went out of business. But here we are, in in the 21st century, and all of these quacky disciplines are coming back. I mean, homeopathy, is a billion-dollar industry now. There are all sorts of homeopathic remedies, and as I told you, a lot of them aren't true homeopathic. In order to be truly homeopathic, it has to be like cures like, and at infinitesimal doses. Now, just think back for a second. Just use your common sense. Does any of that make sense to you? Really? Does any of that make sense? Is there any way to explain why someone might take a homeopathic remedy and feel better? Well, there is a thing called the placebo effect. If you believe something enough, you believe something's going to make you better, you you probably will feel better. Also, a lot of diseases run their course. Sometimes, tincture of time is the best medicine, because a lot of things go away. So you have nausea and vomiting. Maybe it's due to a virus. You take a homeopathic remedy. You feel better a day later. You say, "Wow, that remedy worked." Well, maybe it was just because the illness that you had was going away. So that's really, there's no plausible mechanism of action or scientific evidence to explain anything about homeopathy. There's no way to justify homeopathy and explain it scientifically. It's not science. It's anti-science. It's nonsense, actually. There's only one context in which homeopathy, uh, it reminds me of quantum physics, where nothing in quantum physics makes sense, but we know that it's true. We know that particles become entangled, and spooky action at a distance, and all of those things, and the double slit experiment. So it may very well be that if homeopathy works, it works because, like that particle that you made collapse from the wave of probabilities in the unified field in quantum physics, that Because you believe it, it happens. So with homeopathy, remember this: um, less is more, nothing is something, and belief is everything. If you believe that nonsense, you have a future in the Trump administration.